Lew Renninger, and this is my layout. I live in Manassas, Virginia, and he said I wonder how old I am. Well, I'm 81, you know, so I might forget a few things. It took me about 7 years off and on to finish this. But of course, you're not supposed to ever finish a layout, but I've just run out of room. I got interested in these trains back when I was a kid. And the Reading Railroad ran about 100 yards in back of our house. So when it was hot, we didn't have air conditioning, and when it was hot, I'd just lay in bed, wait for the train to come, and then just the clickety-clickety-click would just put me right to sleep. And then when I retired, the wife said, you got to get a hobby. All you've done is work. So I happened to go down in Manassas to the Rail Fest and saw a couple of guys I knew that were in the train club. So I joined their train club. Now, the thing that my wife didn't realize, she didn't realize how expensive this hobby was. So she doesn't know how much I've spent here, although I do have a spreadsheet with everything on it. So maybe when I die, she'll find the spreadsheet. But it'll be too late then. So let's see, I guess I can tell you a little bit about this layout. It's not really a big layout. It's about 125 square feet. I built it in parts. I started with a small section over here, and then I built this section here, 8 feet. Then I built that section down that way. Then I built this section up here, and now I've just about run out of space. Although I did have a little space here, and I have a little N scale layout. This is HO scale. It's probably the most popular scale right now. Over here, you've got some mountains. And that was made using foam. It's the blue foam or the pink foam that they use for insulation. And you have a little, quote, knife. It's really just a piece of wire stretched between two holding prongs. And when you plug it in, it gets really hot. So you can shape that foam any way you want. And then over the foam, I put a hydrocal. It's a lightweight plaster, but it's impregnated into cloth. And you wet the cloth, and then you just lay it on that foam. And then on top of that, after I got that kind of shaped the way I wanted, then I put regular plaster on, and then I just with a knife and some tools, I just kind of shape it the way I wanted. Now this mountain here with the coal mine, that all I did was just crumble up newspaper and then put impregnated sheets on top of that, and then plaster, and then I just carved it. Trees, well, I made some of them that I bought. They came as packages of weeds, and they soak those into glycerin, and they become pliable. You tear parts off of the big weed, you make little weed, and then you paint the stalks to make it look like a tree color. And then there was another kind that I made from plants that I grow outside, called sedum. Over here, I have a river with bridges on either side of the river, and the river is just an epoxy that you lay down. First I paint the underneath. So the darker color is supposed to mean darker or deeper water. And you kind of feather it up to the end. And then you pour this resin in there. And it ends up looking like water. Then you have the coal mine with all the coal cars. All the coal is to scale, to 187 scale. They grind it up until it gets to the right scale. And then the coal loads, most of these I built, you just take a piece of wood that's going to fit into that coal car. You put glue down, white Elmer's glue. You throw the coal on top. You try and round it just a slight amount. And then you take glue, which is 50% water, 50% white glue, and you take an eyedropper and you drop it on that. And that's the same way you do on the ballast on the tracks. This stone kind of stuff here, it all comes loose and you get it the way you want it, and then you spray it with a little water, drop on the 50-50 glue, and it hardens up. I have a little bridge here, a hanging bridge with a jumper on it. I made sure that if it was straight, he didn't hit the water. Unfortunately, it's not to scale. Then over here, we have a little pond. This is an older town here. It's called Meredithville, in honor of one of my granddaughters. We have Jimmy's Barber Shop, which is in honor of my son. The Benich Apartments, that's for my wife, that's her maiden name, Benich. And I have an O'Connor building. The restaurant is for the Glasgow family. And if you knew the Glasgow family, you would appreciate why it's a restaurant. Over there, I have a Lew's Brew building. That's the brewery. And then here's just several houses. And over there is a fire station, a school, a church, and a train station. Once again, I tried to put in as many trees as would fit. I take a lot of flack from people in the club because all of my yards are so nice. You know, they're not real messy. The whole layout is very nice, and they like to say that it's being policed by the scenery police. Over in this section now, this is the new development. They're all nice new houses here. And at the track crossings, I have crossing lights that flash off and on when the trains get near, and then they go off when they pass by. That's all off of a little electronic board underneath the layout. And at all the crossings I have the lights. On this street I have traffic lights, and those traffic lights really work. They synchronize, you know, from green to yellow to red. Of course, the cars don't move. I mean, I don't know. I think somebody needs to honk the horn out. All of the buildings have lights in them. Over there, a little park. It's, you know, got a Don's John in it. This is a department store, Clara's department store, after the videography of this thing. Here we have Amber's building here. Amber's, what is it? It's the water company building. This is Dana's Fabric, my wife. I probably should have changed it now to Dana's Knitting, since the fabric isn't so much anymore, it's mostly knitting. Here we have Morgan's Iron Works, in honor of Morgan Glasgow, another one of my granddaughters. And, you know, they've got the little substation for power, and I have a switch so the trains can come in and pick up items from the ironworks. Over there in the corner, corners are hard to mess with for buildings. But I found a trailer and I put it there. And that trailer section, that's my West Virginia section. Then we have this big gorge here with a rowboat down below. Also over here is a ranger giving heck to these two people who are climbing down, standing on the edge of this little cliff, although they are tied off. And they have a little overlook here for the tourists. The Carson Gorge here. And over here we have Colton Power and Light, my grandson. And here is a Renninger's distribution plant. Then over here we have the Redding repair facility and a yard with a bunch of trains in it. And right next to that is a farm. We've got some cattle here, and we've got chickens, and men shoveling the car droppings that you can see along there, and another nice little house that they live in. And since they don't have indoor plumbing, there's an outhouse over here. And the guy's got the door open, and I'm not sure if he's going in or he's coming out. And of course, I have a lot of vehicles. The vehicles are just a big mix of different kinds of cars. This whole thing is not any place real. It's just things that I put together. I found a building that I liked, and I bought it. So it doesn't really represent anything or anywhere. The whole system is run with a little computer, and each locomotive, it's called DCC, Digital Command and Control. In each engine you have a little chip, and that chip decodes signals that are sent out over the track. And since signals go out over the tracks, that means you got to keep the tracks clean. And what you do is you assign some engine to a throttle. All these engines come with a number on them, like 5513. This one, for instance, 3606. So into here, you would put 3606. And that means every time you turn a knob here or something, a signal goes on that says the signal is for 3606. All the other trains running, they all look at that signal, but they say, I'm not 3606, so they ignore it. So it's really like a tiny little network. And you can run as many trains as you have power. That's what limits your running of trains. Today, trains, locomotives come with sound. They have decoders installed and sound in them. Let's see, can I? There's a lot of little things that you can add, like hikers going across the mountain there, and you've got chickens and cows and people sitting around in the park, and people going into stores. See, people keep giving me free things, and I just cannot afford free things anymore. One of my wife's friends, she gave her some N-scale, which is a real small scale, trains that her husband had, and her husband passed away, and I ended up having to build, all he had was a 3-foot by 4-foot piece of plywood for it, so I had to build legs for it. He had a little bit of track, so I had to go out and buy track. He had 1 or 2 buildings, so I had to go out and buy lots of buildings. So anyway, I ended up buying all that stuff. So all that free thing turned out to be pretty expensive. So I belong to this club, Prince William Model Railroad Club. What we do is we do shows at about 5 libraries. We do that for free. And then we go to shows where we get paid for having a layout, $100. $200. And my modules, I don't have set up. They're sitting over there along the wall. First you have the flat 2 foot by 4 foot section, and you have track on that, and everybody builds to the same specs on where the tracks are and how much space you leave between them. No matter who brings a module to the show, you can just set them next to each other and you put a piece of track in between them and they're all connected to go. And you have to then just run underneath the module, you have some plugs for the electronic connections, and then you have to run a cable so your little throttles work. But I have one module which is representative of Manassas, old buildings that were businesses. The other module I have is a scene of a crash, a car crash. And there's a police car in each lane with lights flashing and an ambulance with lights flashing. And EMTs with a stretcher taking a person to the ambulance. And then underneath the car is a person with their heads cut off. One day I'll put a woman there, and the next day of the show I'll put a man there, so that I'm, distributing things equally. I've got all my cars and stuff displayed. They say if you don't display items in your hobby, then it's not a hobby. You have to display what you have. And you have to be able to repair some of this stuff. There's always something that wears out or breaks. I do all of that. I have a magnifying thing that I wear in my head. The kids enjoy that because when you wear it and you look through it, their eyes are huge. I have lots of signs up here. Railroads, most of them I've been to. All these patches here, most of them are railroads that we've ridden. Yeah, there. This hat has pins from most of the railroads. When we go to shows and the newspaper people come to cover the shows, it's usually my picture that gets into the newspaper, so, I take a lot of heat about that. I think I've had it maybe 4 or 5 times my picture's been in the papers. At the shows, sometimes the kids want to put their fingers on the track, so I tell them, what happened to me a couple of days ago, I put my finger on the track and look what happened. So many times, I get 2 reactions. One, some kids know what it is. Others, they're terrified. Until I show them.
Here with my hair.
Yeah.
Almost there, G-Mom.